A 12-year-old boy thought it was just another day at the river, until the water erupted with deadly force. Dragged under by a massive crocodile, his lungs burned, his heart raced, and every second felt like his last. Could he escape the jaws of one of nature's most fearsome predators, or would the Crocodile River claim him forever? It was early morning when 12-year-old Kieran and his friends arrived at the Crocodile River. The sun was just rising over the dense African savanna, casting a golden hue across the water, but it didn't hide the river's dark undertones. The river, notorious for its crocodiles, was also famous among local children for daring swims. For Kieran, it was a thrill he couldn't resist. He had grown up near the riverbank, listening to elders warn of its dangers. Stories of fishermen disappearing overnight and crocodiles lurking in the shallows had filled his imagination for years. But today, the lure of adventure outweighed fear. The river looked calm enough, reflecting the sky like a giant mirror, and Kieran convinced himself it was safe, if he stayed near the edges. Kieran and his friends kicked off their shoes, rolled up their trousers, and waded into the cool, muddy water. It was invigorating, a sharp contrast to the dry heat of the plains. He felt the current tug gently at his legs, but he laughed it off, diving in with a confidence that only a 12-year-old could muster. Minutes passed with laughter and splashing, and Kieran's friends decided to head back to the shore. But he wasn't ready to leave. His eyes caught a narrow channel where the water deepened near a cluster of reeds. He swam toward it, curiosity overtaking caution. The water here was darker, murkier, and strangely still. Then he felt it. A sudden sharp tug at his leg, like the river itself was reaching for him. Panic surged through Kieran as he kicked violently. The pull grew stronger, dragging him downward. His lungs burned and his vision blurred. A dark shadow moved beneath him, massive and unrelenting. A crocodile. He realized too late that the stories were true. Instinct took over. Kieran remembered everything his father had taught him about struggling in water. Don't thrash blindly. Keep your head above water. Fight strategically. He twisted and kicked, using every ounce of strength to pull free. But the creature's grip was powerful and the water around him churned violently. A scream tore from his throat, rising above the gurgle of the river. His friends ran to the riverbank, shouting for help, but the current carried the terror farther from the shore. Kieran's hands clawed at the water, and he forced himself to stay calm, forcing himself to think. In these moments, panic was death, and clarity was survival. Just as his strength began to falter, Kieran remembered the old trick his grandfather had mentioned about crocodiles. If attacked, hit them on the sensitive areas, the eyes, the snout. Summoning every bit of courage, he aimed a desperate blow at the snout he could barely make out in the murky water. There was a violent splash, and the grip loosened. He kicked toward the surface, gasping for air as if tasting life itself for the first time. Kieran broke free, coughing and shaking, the river still thrumming with danger. But this was only the beginning. The river hadn't released him yet, and he knew he had to keep moving if he wanted to survive. Kieran burst through the surface of the water, lungs burning with the effort of staying alive. His heart pounded as adrenaline surged through every vein, his body trembling from fear and exertion. For a brief moment, he thought he had escaped, but a sudden shift in the water reminded him that the danger was not over. The crocodile lurked beneath, waiting for a moment of weakness. He kicked frantically, water spraying around him as he tried to reach the riverbank. Mud and debris clogged his mouth, but he forced himself to swallow and keep moving. Panic threatened to overtake him, but he forced his mind to focus. His father had always told him, the river doesn't care about fear. You must fight with strategy. Kieran spotted a submerged branch and grabbed it, using it as leverage to propel himself forward. The crocodile surged toward him again, teeth snapping just beneath the water's surface. He swung the branch in desperation, narrowly avoiding a deadly bite. His chest heaved with exhaustion, but the need to survive drove him onward. Meanwhile, on the riverbank, Kieran's friends were screaming for help. A local fisherman, attracted by the commotion, rushed toward the scene in a small boat. He had seen the danger many times before, and his calm presence gave Kieran a glimmer of hope. He needed to hold on, just a little longer. The crocodile, sensing the boy's vulnerability, circled him. Its movements were swift, precise and terrifyingly calculated. Kieran realized he could not outswim it. Fighting it head-on was impossible. He had to outthink it. Using the branch, he created a distraction, striking the water violently to confuse the predator. The crocodile hesitated, giving Kieran a chance to kick hard toward the shore. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest, but he refused to give. The bank was still a distance away, but he could see it, feel the solid earth beneath his feet. He lunged forward, grasping reeds and mud, pulling himself inch by inch. The crocodile snapped at him, missing by mere centimeters. Kieran's mind raced with fear and determination. He remembered a shallow spot he had noticed earlier, where the riverbed rose closer to the surface. If he could reach it, he could stand and regain some control. He pushed through the last terrifying meters, finally feeling the river bottom under his feet. Relief washed over him, but he knew he wasn't safe yet. The crocodile retreated slightly, but Kieran didn't wait. Using every bit of remaining strength, he waded toward a cluster of trees at the river's edge. Mud clung to his clothes and hair, his skin scratched from submerged branches. When he finally reached the shore, the fisherman helped pull him out, and Kieran collapsed onto solid ground, gasping for air and trembling uncontrollably. The ordeal was over, or at least this chapter of it. Kieran had survived the Crocodile River's deadly grip, but he knew the memory would haunt him forever. Survival had come at the price of fear, pain, and a newfound respect for the river's unforgiving nature. Kieran lay on the riverbank, shivering uncontrollably, his clothes plastered to his body with mud and water. The morning sun had climbed higher, but the warmth did little to ease the icy grip of fear still clinging to him. His friends crowded around, chattering nervously, but Kieran barely heard them. His mind was still trapped in the murky waters of the Crocodile River, reliving the moments he thought he would die. The fisherman, a grizzled man with deep lines carved into his sun-baked face, knelt beside him. "You're lucky, boy," he said, his voice calm yet stern. "That river doesn't forgive mistakes." Kieran nodded weakly, understanding now that luck had played a role, but strategy and quick thinking had saved him too. As he caught his breath, Kieran noticed the river shifting. The crocodile hadn't left. It was lurking nearby, its presence betrayed by small ripples and occasional splashes. The realization sent a fresh wave of terror through him. The river was alive, watching, calculating. He had escaped once, but it might not be so forgiving if he ventured back in carelessly. The fisherman helped him to a nearby tree, where Kieran sat, knees drawn to his chest. "The key to surviving that river," the fisherman continued, "is understanding it. You respect it, or it will take what it wants. Never underestimate it." Kieran listened intently, absorbing every word. He had been reckless, driven by curiosity and bravado. Now he understood the price of ignorance. Hours passed as they waited for the river to calm. Kieran's friends were restless, eager to play in the shallows again, but he refused. His experience had changed something in him, an awareness that life was fragile, and the world, even in playful guise, could be lethal. He began to notice the subtle patterns, the way the current shifted near reeds, the deep shadows where sunlight never touched, the faint hum of insects that marked safe ground from danger. Despite the terror he had faced, a strange sense of awe washed over him. The river, for all its danger, was magnificent, powerful and primal. Kieran realized that survival wasn't just about brute strength. It was about observation, patience, and respect. His heart still pounded, but he felt a new determination rising within him. He would not be a helpless prey. He would learn, adapt, and survive. As the day wore on, the fisherman finally nodded. "You've learned something today, boy. Remember it." Kieran clenched his fists, feeling the raw strength of survival coursing through him. He would never forget the feel of that crocodile's grip, or the desperation of gasping for air beneath the murky water. And yet, he felt a strange bond forming with the river, a fear that demanded respect and a fascination that beckoned exploration. For the first time, Kieran began to see himself not just as a child chasing adventure, but as someone capable of facing the wild with courage and clarity. But the Crocodile River was not done with him yet. He had survived its first trial, but the river had lessons left to teach, and the shadows of its depths held secrets he had yet to uncover. By mid-afternoon, Kieran was sitting in a small clearing near the riverbank, wrapped in a thin blanket the fisherman had provided. His body ached from exertion, but he was alive. The adrenaline that had fueled him earlier had faded, leaving exhaustion and the heavy weight of fear. Yet there was one lingering dread. The crocodile was still in the river, unseen but undeniably present. Suddenly, a commotion upstream caught his attention. Branches snapped and water churned violently. Kieran froze, heart hammering. Could the creature have followed him? His friend screamed, pointing toward the water. But before panic could fully set in, a small boat appeared, piloted by two men from the nearby village. They had heard the chaos and come to help. Kieran's eyes widened as they reached him. One man extended a hand. "Hold on, son," he called. Kieran grasped it, feeling the secure grip of someone who knew the river intimately. They pulled him into the boat, and the fisherman followed, guiding the vessel away from the lurking threat. The crocodile's ripples could still be seen, stalking them silently, but the current carried them to safety. Inside the boat, Kieran shivered, not just from cold but from relief. He had survived a trial most adults feared. He had faced a predator designed for killing and had lived. The villagers praised his courage, but Kieran knew luck had played its part. Yet in the same breath he also understood that the river had tested him, and he had passed, if only barely. As they rowed toward the shore, Kieran reflected on what had happened. Survival was not just about strength or bravery. It was about thinking clearly under pressure, staying calm and respecting forces far greater than oneself. Every lesson he had learned in those terrifying minutes beneath the river's surface would shape the way he approached life from now on. When they reached the safety of the village, Kieran's friends ran to him, hugging and laughing nervously. But Kieran remained silent, staring back at the river. It glimmered innocently under the sun, but he knew the dark truth beneath its surface. The river demanded respect, and he had learned it the hardest way possible. The following morning, Kieran woke with a heavy sense of unease. Even after the terrifying ordeal, the Crocodile River called to him, not in a friendly way but with a challenge that tested courage, intelligence, and instinct. His friends wanted to return to play near the water, but Kieran knew better now. Adventure without respect was dangerous. He walked to the riverbank, observing from a safe distance. The water rippled lightly in the sunlight, deceptively calm. Kieran recalled the murky depths where he had been dragged under, the powerful jaws that had nearly claimed him, and the desperate fight to reach air. Each memory was a vivid reminder of mortality, yet it also sparked determination. He would not let fear dominate him. He wanted to understand the river, its patterns, its dangers, its rules. A fisherman approached, noticing Kieran's intense focus. "You want to go back?" he asked, skeptical. Kieran nodded slowly, meeting his gaze with a seriousness far beyond his years. "I want to learn it," he said. "Not fight it blindly. I want to know how it moves, where it hides, and how to survive if it comes again." The fisherman studied him, then finally nodded. "Very well, but only with guidance. One wrong step and you won't have a second chance." Under the fisherman's watchful eye, Kieran waded carefully into the shallows. Each movement was deliberate, measured and calm. He observed the subtle currents, noting where shadows lingered and where fish swam freely. The river was alive with predators, crocodiles, snakes, and hidden snags, but also teeming with lessons for those patient enough to see. Hours passed, and Kieran's fear began to transform into respect. He practiced floating and diving, always keeping awareness sharp. When the fisherman pointed out a submerged branch where crocodiles often lurked, Kieran didn't panic. Instead, he studied it, imagining strategies to survive an encounter. His confidence grew, not reckless bravado, but quiet, intelligent preparedness. By late afternoon, Kieran realized he had gained something far more valuable than escape or thrill. He had learned the river's language, He could read its movements, anticipate its dangers, and respect its power. Survival was no longer luck. It was strategy, patience, and understanding. For the first time, he felt truly capable, able to face not just the river but life itself. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the water. Kieran pulled himself out onto the bank, muddy, exhausted, but stronger in mind and spirit. The Crocodile River had tested him, nearly claimed him, but it had also taught him resilience, courage, and respect for forces far greater than himself. That evening, Kieran sat with his friends around a small campfire near the riverbank. The flames flickered against his mud-streaked face as he recounted the ordeal, his voice steady but tinged with awe. His friends listened, wide-eyed, captivated, by every detail: the sudden pull, the struggle for breath, the terrifying presence of the crocodile. "I thought I was done for," he admitted, "but I learned something important. The river isn't just dangerous, it's alive. It teaches you respect, patience, and courage. You can't fight it blindly. You have to understand it." His friends nodded, absorbing the lesson. They realized that adventure wasn't just fun. It demanded awareness and respect. Kieran's father arrived just as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. He studied his son carefully, pride and worry mingling in his gaze. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. "I don't know how you survived, but I see that you've learned more than I could have taught you in words. Respect life, respect nature, and never forget what you faced today." As darkness fell, the river shimmered in the moonlight, deceptively calm. Kieran stared at it for a long time, feeling the river's pulse echo through him. It had almost taken him, but he had fought wisely, survived, and emerged stronger. The fear remained, yes, but now it was tempered by understanding and respect. In the days that followed, Kieran returned to the river occasionally, but never recklessly. He learned its rhythms, observed its creatures, and shared his knowledge with others. The experience had transformed him from a curious, daring boy into a resilient young adventurer, capable of facing life's dangers with courage and intelligence. Kieran would never forget the day the Crocodile River tried to claim him. The terror, the fight, the desperate gasps for air, they were etched into his memory. But so was the triumph, the victory of clarity over panic, strategy over chaos, and courage over fear. The river had tested him, and he had passed, forever changed by the powerful lesson of survival. Kieran survived the Crocodile River, but not without learning a lesson that would stay with him forever. He discovered that courage alone isn't enough. Survival demands respect, strategy, and sharp instincts. The river may be calm on the surface, but its depths hide dangers that can strike in an instant. For Kieran, this was more than a fight for life. It was a lesson in bravery, awareness, and the raw power of nature. And as he walked away from the riverbank that evening, he knew one thing for certain: he would never take life or the wild for granted again.